Hi, this is Sandy from Spitfire's customer experience team, and in this video we're going to be taking a quick look at fragile string evolutions. I'll do a quick tour of the interface, and then we'll look at each section in a little bit more detail. So looking along the top, we have some information on our system performance. We have global controls for our MIDI channel, tune, pan and master volume and so on, as well as some settings. In the top right here we have a button which allows us to collapse and expand the interface. We have our preset browser, our general controls, and then we have three different pages of controls at the bottom: our Evo grid, our effects, and our signal mixer. At the very bottom here, we have our keyboard displayed, with the coloured range representing the different evolutions, and in the lower left corner we have an info pane, which will display information about anything that we're hovering the mouse over. So, starting in the upper left, we have a little LED here which will be solid green once the plugin is ready to use. It will flash red and green when it's loading to memory. If you play whilst it's loading to memory, you might hear unusual artifacts in the audio, so it's best to wait for this to be solid green before using the plugin. We also have our CPU, disk and memory information here. This will show us generally how our system is performing. We can also see the number of voices that we're using, and we have a refresh button, which will refresh the entire plugin. This can be useful if you have any sticking MIDI notes. We have some global settings here for our MIDI channel, a global tune, pan, and master volume. And then in the top right here, we have some MIDI settings and some global settings, which we'll come back to at the end. Just underneath all of this, we have our preset menu here. We can see that we have the default preset loaded. That is Fragile String Evolutions, a fragile start. We can use these arrows on the left and right to navigate back and forth through our list of presets. And if we've made some changes and we want to save a preset of our own, we can click on this floppy disk icon, give it a name, and hit save. If you want to browse the list of presets, you can click on this arrow to open the menu. We can scroll around the list of presets on the right hand side here. We can favourite any that we particularly like by clicking on the little star icon. Clicking on the play icon here will play as a small preview of this preset to give us an idea of what it might sound like. And if we hover over this eye icon here, we can see some more information about that particular preset. On the left-hand side of the list, we have some tags, such as bright, or distorted, or intense. Clicking these will filter down our presets so that we can find something that is bright, distorted, and intense. And we also have a user tag here, so that we can find our own user presets. If you click clear, that will remove all of these tags, and we'll see the entire list again. If we have a preset selected and we want to load it, we can either double click or we can click load. Underneath our preset menu, we have our general controls. These are expression, dynamics, and the knob. Expression is a simple volume control, and this is controlled on CC11, and dynamics would typically be crossfading between the different dynamic layers in the Spitfire library, but due to the way that String Evolutions is recorded, it's just a simple volume control as well. For the knob, we can click in the center of this button here, and that will tell us what is currently assigned and what we can assign. And we can click and drag, or hover and scroll to adjust any of these controls. For any of these controls on the interface, we can also right-click or control-click on Windows and remove our MIDI automation, or learn a new MIDI CC automation. At the bottom, under our general controls, we have three pages of other controls. The most important is probably our Evo grid, which is the default that's displayed here. This is where we can assign the different sounds on our keyboard. Along the bottom on the x-axis, we can see the different note ranges. And along the y-axis on the left here, we can see the different evolutions, arranged in the different categories, which are traditional, episodic, and extreme. To assign a particular evolution to a range, simply click on the circle, and you'll see it light up. And you'll also see that range displayed on the keyboard at the bottom. If you hold Command and click, you can set all of the notes on the keyboard to a specific evolution. And if you hold Shift and click, this will draw a line from the last selected evolution to the one you click on. To the left of the Evo grid, we have some randomizing functions. Clicking on Feeling Lucky will randomize with all of the available 48 evolutions. Or you can click on the different categories, such as extreme, or episodic, or traditional. And that will randomize within that category. You also have two other options here. Visible will randomize with all of the evolutions you can see currently on the screen. So that is from 28 to 43 right now. And walk will move the evolutions by one step up or down. This is easier to show than tell. And to the right of the Evo grid, we have three controls for each of the evolutions. We have a checkbox which will allow us to toggle whether or not that evolution is sent to the effects. We have a volume trim for each of those evolutions. And we have a stereo pan, where we can pan left and right. Clicking here will switch our view over to the effects. This is where we can control our tape saturation, our delay and reverb sends, and we can also adjust some parameters for each of these. So gain, warmth, and high frequency roll for the tape saturation. And we have time, dampening, panning, feedback, and return level for our delay, and just a simple send and return for our reverb. Just like the general controls above, you can right-click on any of these to learn a MIDI CC automation, or remove one. The third and final category here is our signal mixer. Here we can adjust the different signals, such as close, or ambient, or distorted. Fragile String Evolutions has 6 signals, so you can click to the ×2 and ×8 signals by using these arrows at the bottom. Adjusting the fader to 0 will unload from memory, and dragging a fader up from 0 will load to memory. You can see if a signal is loaded or not by looking at the toggle underneath its name. If you find a mixer setting that you like, you can save it by clicking on this icon on the left, giving it a name, and clicking Save. And then, if you make some changes and you'd like to load your preset again, click Load, choose the preset, and click the Load button. To the right of our signals, we have the controls for variation and our attack, decay, sustain, and release controls for our volume envelope. These are a typical ADSR, and they're explained in the manual, so I won't go into too much depth here. And the variation control will just alter the sound of the evolutions slightly. Finally, looking in the top right here, we have some MIDI settings, such as adjusting our velocity response and removing and resetting our CC mappings. And then we also have our global settings. Clicking this will open a window where we can adjust various different global settings. Under the General tab here, we can copy the settings from this plugin to any of our other Spitfire plugins so that these can be consistent. So for instance, if you have angular string evolutions, you can copy the settings here and they'll be consistent. Under Interface, we can enable and disable the help text in the lower left of the window. We can adjust whether or not the plugin will open in its collapsed or expanded view by default, as well as adjusting and setting its default scale. We can also adjust some other behaviors, such as whether the signals will unload from memory when their faders are set to 0, and whether gain values are displayed in decibels rather than as a percentage. This is also where you can disable host automation. So if your DAW has some kind of conflict with host automation in MIDI, you can disable one and just use the MIDI. Under Audio, we have settings for our maximum number of voices, our preload size, and our stream buffer size. I'd advise leaving these well alone unless you're having performance issues that you need to troubleshoot. And under the plugin settings here, we can adjust our default preset by clicking and then choosing from the list. Last but not least, we also have an About section here, where you can see our end user license agreement, any other acknowledgements, and any licensing information. If you've made some changes to the settings, you can click Save to save them, or just Cancel Out to discard them. That's it for our tour of Fragile String Evolutions. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at spitfireaudio.com/support. Thank you.